Good morning, church. Welcome to another episode of Walk in Wisdom. Going through the book of Proverbs, we're on chapter 18 now, so we're moving right along, moving through there. Excited to see you all soon in person. Don't forget to sign up online for that. But I just want to walk through the book of Proverbs here, chapter 18. I have some interesting little tidbits here. As you've probably noticed, if you followed along through Proverbs and read it all, there is a lot of repetition. So, uh, it's very clear that we need to watch how we talk. That our mouths and our tongues are very powerful, and the things that we say are powerful. So that's kind of repetitive throughout all these chapters, but it's there for a reason. But there's some things I wanted to really pick out of this chapter specifically that are a little bit newer, a little bit different than what we've been reading. It starts off, the very first verse, it says, "Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment." Um, and so there's some other versions that say it a little bit different, but basically the gist of that is saying, uh, you know, we're busy we're busy putting ourselves and isolating ourselves and trying to do things on our own. When I look at this, the next verse, verse 2, it sounds like it's going off on a different tangent altogether, but if you think about it, they really go together. So let me read them together. It says, "Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his own opinion." So basically, it sounds like those are two separate things, but think about that for a second. It says, "Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire," and then it says, "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only wants to express his own opinion or her own opinion." Uh, what I get from these is that we're not meant to live life alone. Pride tells us we got this. Pride tells us that we can handle it on our own. Pride tells us to isolate. Pride tells us to move out on our own, to do everything on our own. Pride tells us not to ask for help. Pride tells us to, all of these things. That pride tells us that we're right, that our opinions are all that matter, that our opinions are worth expressing, but we don't need understanding from other people. So these verses really tie together that as believers, we're not meant to live this life alone. We're meant to live in a community with other people. We're meant to receive understanding, receive constructive criticism, receive things from other people. We're not meant to do this alone. And so we don't have to do this alone. We should be living in community, and we should have accountability. We should have people around us that are willing to tell us when we're acting a fool. They'll be willing to tell us when we need to correct some things or do things better, but also tell us when we're doing things good. Right? Part of being in community is being encouraging to one another. So I really liked how that kind of started the chapter. Then the chapter continues. It talks about your mouth. It talks about the tongue. This is the chapter where I'm sure you've heard the verse. The power of life and death is in the tongue. So it talks about all of that. We've heard that before. But here's some more verses down here, verses 10 through 12 that I really enjoyed. It says, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe. A rich man's wealth is a strong city, like a high wall in his imagination. Before destruction, a man's heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor." So I really like these verses. I'm sure you've heard, the Lord is a strong tower, all of that stuff. Uh, but I like the comparison, the contrast between someone who is righteous or someone who walks with God and someone who is relying on themselves and relying on their own wealth, because it says the righteous man runs into the Lord as a strong tower, and they're safe. The righteous person runs to the Lord and they're safe, but the rich man, uh, in his imagination, his wealth is a strong city, is a high wall. I love the way it says that. It says a rich man's wealth is a strong city and like a high wall, but then it says in his imagination. So basically, we've allowed ourselves to believe this illusion of our things and our stuff being our strong tower, our things or our stuff being the wall that protects us. But in the end, it's all in our imagination, and those things aren't protecting us. They aren't keeping us safe. Only the Lord is our strong tower. Only by running into His tower, running to Him, are we safe. So what I got out of this was that we should run to the Lord, who is our strength, and not to our stuff, not to our abilities, not to anyone or anything else. And one of the things that just kind of stuck out to me as I was reading through here, one of the things that kind of I felt being spoken to me was that, that includes everything in our lives. There's no one else that we should run to, even our spouses, even our whatever it is. We shouldn't be running to our spouse for that strong tower. We shouldn't be running to our spouse for that safe place. We should be running with our spouses, but to God. So we should be running with our spouses to God, who is both of our safe places, both of our strong towers. Because when we put too much of that weight on those that we live with, those that we love, they can't live up to what it is that we actually need. Only God can live up to that. Only God is strong enough to hold us up. Now, can they be there for us in times of need? Can they run with us to God when we need to? Yes, but we shouldn't be putting the unfair pressure on our loved ones to be the strong tower that only God can be. So, as we go throughout this time, as you go through your weeks, as you think on Proverbs 18, just remember that the Lord is our strong tower. Remember that He is the one we run to and are safe. And we don't run to anything that we have. None of our material possessions, none of the people in our lives are going to live up and hold up to be the strong tower that we need. But only God can. So run with your spouses, run with your significant others to the strong tower, who is God. And that's where we find safety, and that's where we find peace, and that's where we find comfort. So I love you guys. Can't wait to see some of you all in person soon. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.